I was working 60 hours a week.
You know, you
Yeah.
worked at a pizza shop, full time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, 25x ROAS. And you reply with like, is that good? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
serious, is that good? And I was,
From there, we kind of took off.
where were you? What did you do in August?
We did just about 30,000. It probably was the best decision I made, like I would say like my lifestyle from even before March to now is literally 180 flip.
So, first of all, Zach, I appreciate you for being here, dude.
Of
I'm
course.
pumped for this. It's gonna be killer.
So am
For
I.
those who don't know, dude, let them know. You go ahead and introduce yourself. Let them know who Zach is, and then go ahead and jump into your offer a bit there, brother.
Cool. So my name's Zach, Wiser Zach. Born and raised in New Jersey. Got into the online space back in March, so a little over half a year now. And it all started with TikTok Shop, and then slowly transitioned into remote sales. And from there, we kind of took off. And yeah, so basically, starting off with Noah, I guess we were gonna go with like a two-sided, like do it with your bro, I guess, mentorship and program, and we were gonna try to, incorporate TikTok Shop. While we gained more clarity and everything with our offer, I guess, we kind of decided to just full force into, just remote sales. We saw more benefit in that, we could help more people do that. So yeah, and then we basically took off from there and kept the momentum high with Noah throughout the last what almost 4 or 5 months now.
Yeah, just about I think 4 months or so. But sweet, dude. Okay. So talk about the transformation because that's pretty incredible. Talk about your guys' transformation.
So, like starting anything off really, your head's like I guess all over the place. It's like, do I do this, that, having like a vision, and having a plan sought out for us, versus when we started, we were like, all right, we got to do this, this, and this, and then, checklist wouldn't get done because we put all of our focus on this, that, and yeah, really, the benefit I saw is just being held accountable. That was my biggest thing was like getting on those weekly calls and really like being held accountable and just knowing, okay, this is what needs to be done. This is the next step, and just like all of that, and hearing feedback as well. That's really like my biggest thing was I was all over the place, trying to do back end work, front end work, and all of that, but like having, I guess, like I said, that person holding you accountable. And then just like on top of that, getting feedback was the biggest thing, knowing that we were going in the right direction.
Love it. Love it. So what exactly was your transformation, dude? I think
So,
yeah, go ahead.
so really, my biggest, like, I would say transformation was, having just like clarity, like really like figuring out, my certain angle and, my certain like direction that I wanted to go with myself and, with the offer that I have in place. I would say my biggest transformation was just like dialing in with content, understanding, certain audiences and, what content goes where and, the target audience that it's going to.
For sure. For
So,
sure.
I started off, I guess, I was nervous to post, I guess, like I had all these ideas in my mind and I didn't know how to execute on them, but like like you said, it's just the first week. It's going to be, it's going to be cringe. It's going to be, whatever the case may be. You're going to feel judged, but once you get to a certain point, the background noise, I guess, fades away, and then like on top of that, your mind just starts racing with other ideas. I would say my content literally went from like 0 stars to at least 7.5. I would say.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I would agree with you for sure. So when you came to me about what was it like early May, maybe mid-May, something around there. How much were you making at that time?
Um, it really fluctuated. Personally, I was probably making like $3,000, $4,000 a month just between everything that I had. Which it kept me sustainable. I used to work full time, so making that online really was just like it was a pay cut, but it was less labor aspect to it. And I had freedom, but I would say so 3 to 4 thousand, and then scaled all the way up to easily 10,000 in the past 2 consecutive months. So
Heck yeah.
yeah,
Heck yeah. So you doubled your income, dude. That's awesome.
yeah.
That's killer. That's killer. Okay, dude. So when I got before I get into like all the processes, really, I actually want to figure out more of, your personal story, kind of,
Hmm.
who was Zach before you came to me? What were you doing? How was your come up? How did you grow up? How did your life look like back then? You know what I mean?
Okay, so yeah, so um, I went to high school for graduated high school, but I transferred out online my junior year. So I've been out of school for easily 6 years now. Yeah, I got, sucked into a whole job, money took over. And so started, putting all my hours into like manual labor, cooking up pizzas and whatnot. And yeah, I thought I had it figured out. And yeah, so like I said, we started TikTok Shop and basically, we saw the online money thing and then so like I said, I was working away and then my come up was it was pretty quick. So I had a dual partnership with my buddy, so we had momentum rolling. So like I said, we went to he was already in remote high ticket sales. He put me on actually and after TikTok Shop, like I said, we kind of just rolled with that. We both got on our own offers, rolled with that and
That's killer. How does uh how does life feel, dude? Different? Is there any like difference in your life or maybe your mindset, how you maneuver from when you were making 4 to 5 thousand bucks a month worth of job to now making double that remote? Like, do you have a different perspective on life? How does that look like?
um, you know, I want to say yes, but also at the same time, no. And I'll break it down like this. Like, I have a good work ethic, like I was working 60 hours a week. So it's just like, I saw that my time go by, wake up, rinse and repeat, do the same thing. And the one thing I will say is the amount of like clarity and whatnot I have within my own head of, this is what I want to be doing. And then just like on top of that, it's like I have that freedom. So, if I do need to take a break, it is what it is. I need a day off. You know what I mean? It's not like that. I'm working because I gotta pay a car, back then. But
Right.
really what it comes down to, and really anything, whether you're working online, whether you're working in a place, it's consistency. And I think when I got into the online space, it was, no one's going to be there to tell you to do this, and that's where the consistency comes in. And then on top of that, the discipline. When I was working my pizza job, I just showed up to work because I was like told, you got to be here at 9, so it kind of just was like, oh, I'm going in.
Yeah.
So I would say, I have a lot more clarity in my head of, I can take steps. Before I was kind of trapped and, I was like, okay, I got to think about all this other stuff. I didn't have time for myself. Now I have that consistent thought, like me and myself, and this is where I want to be going. This is what I want to do.
Yep.
So I'm going to take action on that.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. From pizza guy to remote, that clarity is definitely, I'm assuming, a lot different.
Yeah.
Um, okay, cool. So, dude, can I ask you? I mean, when, or honestly, before that, what made you decide to kind of hop on and work with us specifically? Did you have any doubts or hesitations, anything like that?
I'm just going to be straight up, you always have your doubts. When you first get into like even just doing anything online, you hear a lot of background noise of like, oh, this is, it's money grab, pyramid scheme, this, that, and the other thing, which me being in the online space for 3 years or 3 months before that, I had my doubts, but you gain clarity over it. You put your trust in people and, the biggest thing is just, hearing them out, I would say, it probably was the best decision I made, like I was skeptical at first, obviously, like anyone else would be, but once you put in the work, obviously, you could lead a horse to the water, but you can't tell it to drink. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's almost like that. We put in work and, myself grinding on the back end really and just making sure everything is, you know, going smoothly. Like I said, the work's not going to do itself.
For sure, for sure. So I want to touch on that like skepticism a bit because it's huge, and I want you to be honest throughout this entire thing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean, I had that too. I think everybody watching this has had that as well. It's like you're gonna pay somebody high five figures or high four figures, maybe you're going to be skeptic. You don't know if they're going to take your money and run. You don't know if they're going to deliver real value. You know what I mean? So that skepticism for you, can you break down a bit of like what was going through your head, in terms of the skepticism, and then maybe what has changed to give you clarity on like, oh, why was I being skeptic in the first place? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's really just a mindset thing. That's what I've come down to. And, people can give you all the information and the value, and, they could, like I said, take you to the water, but it's like you have to go and do it yourself. So like, obviously the biggest thing right now is people see, oh, I can generate you $10,000 online, and they're like, okay, let me get this. And then they say, oh, it's a $5,000 investment. Oh, okay, well, when am I going to get that $10,000 back? Whatever the case may be. You know, my biggest thing was, I knew I had to put in the work. And obviously, being in the space for 3 months before that, I would say, like, my first ever, like, this is like the biggest thing about, like, I would say, like, online, like, business is the first person that I invested in, I would say, wasn't the greatest, but that's the risk I was willing to take. And that's why I guess I had that little, like, skepticalism, whatever you want to say it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I stuck with it, and that's really what it is. I can tell you this again, I feel like I am, disciplined hard worker, and, if there's a task at hand, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it to my best abilities. And I think that's why the benefit of, working with someone, especially Noah, really benefited me. You could throw all the whatever thoughts that I had out the window. They're all limiting beliefs.
Right. Right. Without a
I
doubt.
would say I would say also that's a big thing too. A lot of people do have those limiting beliefs that really holds them back from what their, like, truest potential is, and like what they, really could be. Because if you don't take that risk, you're going to go with the more certain answer, which is, I'm going to stay here safe with my, 2,000, 5,000, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say were some of the limiting beliefs that you might have had?
Um, I would say, like, is this really gonna have, like, is it, am I really gonna get my, like, return on investment back? Is the value really there? Just like the littlest things that, you're never gonna get the answer to until you really do it. Like, it wasn't like anything really. I think, Noah, you really crushed a lot of our limiting beliefs, when we hopped on calls before all of that, and
Hmm.
really, like, I guess I would say, like, nurtured us into, this is where we wanted to go. We also heard a lot about you through other people online. So it was almost like, yeah, we got to go with Noah.
I love it. That's awesome. I love it. Okay, cool. So to get into more of like the the system kind of things, what would you say, Zach, are some of the like first shifts or maybe wins that you noticed once we actually started plugging in the systems? We spent the first few weeks working on limiting beliefs because that was a big thing. I know you mentioned that, that's something huge for me as well. It's like guys can, reach for the stars, but if your limiting beliefs are going to self-sabotage you, it's pointless, right? So that's something I love tackling within like the first few weeks. But once we did start plugging in systems, what would you say were a few of the first shifts or wins that you noticed?
Well, before even the systems, like you said, the limiting beliefs. So, I really took the time to, I would say, like, go through, like, the first modules that we had, the first videos, really just like the whole mindset of everything. I would say that literally was the first win in itself. That, like, completely changed, the way that I just, like, went upon life, really. I would say, that planner, I filled it out fully the whole 75 days. And that was the biggest thing. I looked forward to doing that. So I would say, honestly, that was my first win out of anything, was
I love
that.
that.
And then on top of that, the systems. I already broke down this a little bit, but really, like, the content, just getting a, like, a daily flow of a schedule. I didn't start off consistent. I honestly probably started posting later than I should have, because I just didn't have that clarity within me yet. But, it took a couple calls, and, we broke everything down. Literally,
Hmm.
we went back to the first pages that we went over when we first got on the call, and you basically said, okay, well, this is what you told me back then. Is that still where you are? Is that still, like, the path? Is that still, like, the target that you want to go? Is that still the angle? And, we looked over everything, switched up a couple things, and that was when I got clarity on that. And so the content consistency with that was when we start, like, at least for me, I started to notice, would say a follower count go up. Not that that matters, but, engagement really over everything.
Nice.
So I would say that. And then obviously, I would say most importantly, ads. Ads really took over, and that's where a lot of the success really came from. Really finding, what is working, and what's not, just to like dial down on that.
Yeah, for sure. I remember the ads once we plugged that part of the system in, the compounding ads that we threw in. I think I have a screenshot of you texting in the chat and you're like, dude, we spent 60 bucks and we're at like 1800 or 1500 collected. And
Yeah,
I was like, oh, 25x ROAS. And you reply with like, is that good? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
serious, is that good? And I think that was a really cool moment for me to see of like, you were so fresh with ads. You didn't even
Exactly.
understand the extremity of how good it was performing. And you're like, 25 return on ad spend, is that good? You know what I mean? And I
Hmm.
thought that was a really cool, really funny moment because it's just neat. You guys threw in 60 bucks in the first day, you collected 15, and then like 9 days later, you guys were at like a 50 return on ad spend. It was just really
Yeah.
awesome stuff. On that note, dude, I'll get into ads in a second. Where would you say you're at now? I mean, we're at the start of September, on the first or second day of September. Where were you? What did you do in August? If you're cool with that, if you're cool with talking about it.
So revenue, we did just about 30,000, and then cash collected was almost 15,000.
Wow.
So yeah, so we August was our best month. And yeah, I mean it doesn't really like feel like it doesn't set in, it's kind of like, which is a good thing because, like you always talked about keeping our standards, the highest they can be. So I don't know, it's like surreal almost. It's
Yeah.
crazy like to see where we've come from literally from March. Like this is the one thing we said the entire time, Noah, was, the momentum was high and we just wanted to keep it rolling. So I feel like we stuck to that.
Yeah, that was a big one. I definitely remember talking about momentum because when you hopped in, it was like momentum was already very high. You guys were like, it was a painful, and you were just like, dude, let's do it. There's no think about it. I think there was another person that you guys wanted to speak to, but it was like, let's just do it. Let's hop on it. And I was like, I love it.
Hmm.
Keep the momentum rolling because at this point, what happens a lot of the time is people will, hop into the game, pay someone, and then kind of get relaxed after, like, okay, I just made that big purchase. That's when buyer's remorse comes in and they're like, shit, what did I just do? Is that a good idea? That kind of thing
Exactly.
comes through. But for you guys, it was a game of just keep this ball rolling. And because you did, dude, we launched ads at the start of August, and
Yeah.
August was your best month. So
Yeah.
September is gonna crush. We keep the ads running for sure. And it's like just it's so cool to see that, you guys, you're a pizza worker. You
Yeah.
worked at a pizza shop, full time, and now where are you at? You're in Costa Rica. You did 15K
Yeah.
cash. Very impressive stuff, right? So, dude, outside of numbers, Zach, what else has changed for you, would you say, personally or lifestyle? If nothing, that's fine as well, but what would you say?
Um, I honestly, like, my mind is a lot more just like open. I used to be like one of those people that, is kind of just like, I need stuff like structured, laid out, whatnot. But like, obviously, I still am like that. But I'm more like open-minded to things. My lifestyle really like it changed for the better. I when I quit my job, I found myself in a place of, okay, like I was lost, I was confused. I was hanging around the wrong crowd, things like that. So really, just like, I don't know, like when I started, I would say, I thought, okay, yeah, it is what it is. Is it going to pay the bills? I don't know, but it's money coming in. But throughout the entire time, just like connecting with people in the space, the community, just like, I don't know, just like-minded people, really changes you, especially like, when you hang around them and, you're all having those conversations, you want to be the best person that you can be. And honestly, like, I would say like my lifestyle from even before March to now is literally 180 flipped. So it's really just like, for me, like I got the best of both worlds, like I changed my life. And then on top of that, I've learned a skill that, I've learned so much that I will literally carry with me for the rest of my life. So it's just like, I would say literally 180 flip.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
actually that's actually so wild. Dude, would you say there was like a moment in time of working with us when you realized like, oh dang, this stuff is actually working. Like I'm actually seeing some kind of return. Like this is kind of cool.
Definitely, definitely. There's probably multiple times that I've thought that. At a certain point, I kind of just like I was like, oh shit, like I don't know when specifically it was, but I've definitely had multiple like moments like that. I would say literally just like I keep going back to this, but like my first post that I made, the amount of engagement and just like, I would say like love that I got from just like everyone that like, engaged with it really was like a big win for me. That was probably the first win. And I was like, oh shit, because I got to that point of like everyone gets to it where before they post, they're nervous, whatever,
Hmm.
whatever the case may be. So when I did that, realized, this is it. I'm gonna make this post and I'm not gonna be done. I'm gonna commit. That was probably the first time I was like, okay, this is it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the cringe mountain, dude. And
Exactly, exactly.
yeah, literally. What about for like the system itself or maybe just like, monetarily, like when you saw that first, pay in full, when you saw that
It
first,
was
check come through.
honestly, yeah, like I would literally like we took us a little bit to, figure out our structure of our offer because like I said previously we were running on two different things and we didn't have clarity within that. So once we found that, and then we were like, all right, full in remote sales. This is what we're going to do, go remote. Literally like the first people we signed into like the community that weren't our friends, people that were outside of like our hometown or like even like our state. So I would
Hmm.
literally say like the first close we had wasn't a PIF payment plan, but just that feeling of, you know, just seeing money come in that wasn't like it was just different. It was a different
Yeah.
feeling that, I'm used to Fridays. All right, here's your paycheck. Take a
Hmm.
picture, put it in the bank account. It was like, all right,
Yeah.
here's $500 and felt like thin air.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally. That's a cool way to put it for sure. So Zach, I think your come up story is very inspirational. I think for anybody, especially, guys who are working a job, um, going from working full time and getting used to that monthly or that weekly, okay, Friday, here's your paycheck, to now, almost getting paid out of thin air because you're providing so much value. What would you say if someone was in like the same spot you were in 3, 4, 5 months ago? What would you tell them?
That's a really good question. There's a lot that I would tell them, but I would say like the biggest thing for me was I worked like literally 6 days a week, so it was hard for me to find time with myself. And when I did find the time with myself, I wanted to do anything but put my head down and work even harder. Um, but it's like once you really got to take the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I would say. My biggest thing was I'll tell you when I was like uh really like I would see people online, making money online, whatever the case may be, while I'd be working, scrolling on the reels, scrolling on the TikTok, and I always ask myself like, okay, like what do I want to do? Like what what should I do online? Like what path can I go down? You see trading, you see a lot of people right now do clothing brands. Sales was like the last thing that I even thought, I would even be going into. And I wanted to do a clothing brand. That's where I started. That's what I wanted to do. But it gave me like that drive to like start actually working on things while I was working, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
where I'm going with this is really finding the one thing that you feel like, you want to do, whether it's for 6 months or 12 months. Give yourself that time frame. And I don't know. I'll tell you this, I might have not taken the smartest path of when I quit my job before I had anything going for me, but I knew that that would give me that push to like figure it out before it was too late.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying quit your job, but the one thing I would just say is, you're going to have to like, whether or not make an investment, whether or not it's monetary, whether or not it's time, whether or not it's, quitting your job, whatever it may be, but make sure you have something ready. And then if you don't, figure it out, but you're going to have to take that time while you're working. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't like, I had school where I feel like I could have more BS hours to, get away with things like that. I was, 6 days a week, 9 to 9. So it was just like, I don't know. I feel like I didn't have time. And when I did the wrong things. I was going out with friends, doing things like that. But if you give yourself literally, whether or not it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, you're going to have to just put your head down, put in the work. And then after that, things will come, whether or
Yeah.
not you start changing your daily routine, bettering that, things will fall into place.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with that. Put yourself in a corner is what I always say. Put yourself in a corner, put fire under your ass and, test your own limits. It's you're testing
Hmm.
your own fight or flight. I've done that for myself countless times. Like I don't talk about this much, but back in the day, dude, I had like 4 credit cards maxed to the limit. Like,
Hmm.
I was just throwing it into mentors, dude, like paying
Hmm.
rent on my credit card back in the day, and it was like that was me putting myself in the corner, and you putting yourself in the corner is quitting the job and like, what, okay, I'm gonna trust that these systems work. Dude, you never know. You could have paid, 5K to someone, they could have took it and ran. You just lost 5K and you don't have your job anymore. That's where the risk comes in because, this online space can be risky. Like there's a lot of guys out here that just don't fulfill, don't do what they say they're gonna do, don't promise, don't deliver. And that's what really sucks about it. And that's why I think, building a brand, a personal brand is so powerful. Um, on that topic, dude, I want to ask you what what made you want to work with us compared to anybody else? Like I know you said you've heard from us or heard about me from other people, but like what made you really want to pull that trigger and assume that I wasn't going to take your money and run away to Colombia?
The biggest thing is, the way I would say, you didn't have much content, I would say, out at the time. There wasn't like, you got a lot of content now. It's literally 20x and just like perform, like it just is better overall. I would say just like you were like that personal person that like, we could relate to. And, not that we're the same at all, but it was almost just like, we've been friends the entire time. And then like you were not some different guy that you were on Instagram to like actually meeting you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was the connection, I would say, that really, for me at least, that was my biggest thing was like felt like a connection that like, all right, like he's gonna help us out, as long as we, put in the work, obviously.
Yeah.
You eat what you kill. So
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. That's
yeah.
very kind. I think that's something I strive for myself, and I see you guys doing that with your clients as well, which I love that like the way that I work with you guys, the way I work with my clients is rubbing off on how you guys work with your clients. And it's that
Hmm.
that personal level where I've put in tens, almost $50,000 into mentors, and I've had the ones that run away with my cash. I've had the ones that are
Exactly.
douchebags, and I've also had the ones that are like, I love them with like, they're like my best friends now. You know what I mean? So building that kind of friendship with your clientele is something that I strive for. And it's like, if you see someone on Instagram, they seem like the coolest person, you pay for the program, you work with them one on one, and you realize they throw themselves on a pedestal and they're yelling and spewing all this information down at you. It's almost hard to actually be connected and actually feel comfortable asking questions and for help throughout the process versus like the same way I'm more authentic, like this than I am on Instagram.
Yeah.
And people think I'm authentic on
Hmm.
Instagram. So when it's like this, I level myself with you guys and it's like I was in your shoes. We're not that different from when we grew up. Like the way we grew up, not that different. You know what I'm saying? So to level out with you and just be able to hold your hand throughout the process and just teach you the steps on what I did to do what I did and just do it for yourself. It's just having a plug and play system is my point. It's very cool and being level with your clients. So I appreciate that again.
Yeah.
Um, on that note as well, I know you mentioned, how personal it was. How would you say like your experiences were when we would hop on one-on-ones? Because I remember we'd have a couple one-on-ones, but I'd have to tell you straight up, like,
You
you
got to
need to
do
do
this.
this. Yeah, it's like, dude, why aren't you doing
Yeah.
that? And being straightforward is something I love being. Like, what would you say your experiences with that?
Dude, great. I literally like that's like, really why I wanted to, make that investment was, you need to be held accountable, whether or not you think you're the most disciplined person ever. It's just like, if you have someone there to tell you to do it, honestly, that's the biggest game changer for me. Some people are different, they can write it down and get it done.
Hmm.
Which, worked for me in the beginning. You first 3 weeks, the ball's rolling, it's hot, and then you get to that fourth week and you're kind of just like, all right, the routine's in place, but there's always more that you can be doing, and
Hmm.
that's where you came in and basically where, like you said, you guys got to start doing this, you got to start doing that, what's going right now is great, but that needs to be the standard, and then you need to add this, you need to do more of this, and I would say that experience overall is what actually got us to where we are right now. Throughout all the one-on-one calls, I'm not the brightest guy. I went to high school in school. I was in high school for 2 years, transferred to online school. Online school is pretty much, Google. So I would just Google everything. But yeah, like I came into this, I had some like idea about like, Instagram, how to like work things like that. But it was just like those small, like silly questions that, you might feel embarrassed to raise your hand or you don't want to ask, whatever the case may be. It never felt like a weird way, or like it didn't feel like I couldn't ask it because, you would have some sort of like negative energy back. It was just like, I got the answer I needed, and it was great because it just helped me out even more. I was never nervous to ask a question, run to anyone to help. And that benefited me a lot more because I feel like a lot of other people, the way they come off is just like I said, it's not personal. So it's just like, it was just like me asking you a question as if we were best friends.
Hmm. Yeah, sweet. I love that. I love that. Well, dude, now that you've hit 30K, you did 15K cash. What's next? Like what's next for you? What are you aiming for this month and the end of the year?
Well, the end of the year, I'm easily looking, I'm looking at least, 150 to 200,000, but I don't like to think that far ahead. So, I'll just keep it at that. I would say monthly, definitely, to up that 30,000 easily. I don't see us slowing down at all. I don't see anything that we're doing, getting, cut out or whatever the case may be, only just stacking more onto it. So, I'll be, I guess safe, and I'm just gonna say, go from 30,000 to 35,000, and obviously my expectations are way above that, but I don't like to put too much in my head at once, but
Yeah.
35 to 40,000, just keep stacking is really, my biggest thing.
Sweet. Sweet. I respect it. I respect it, dude. I want to ask you really quick. How many team members do you guys have?
Uh, what, three?
Three? Okay. What are
Yeah.
those team guys? Like what positions
We
are
have, so it's me and then got a setter.
they? Okay, gotcha. So like one main team member pretty much.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. So your systems are pretty lean, right? And I think that's that switch compared to 90% of the info space right now where it's, you see the guys drawing insane diagrams on Miro. They're like, you need to hire 16 VAs to do this, this, and this, push out 11,000 pieces of cold outreach. I mean, how much cold outreach did you do when you were working with us?
It's little to none, probably
Yeah.
none.
Yeah. That I think that's the biggest reason on why I don't see you guys hitting any less than 50K this month or next
Yeah,
month because one, your team is so lean. You have one team member, right?
yeah,
And the systems are already in play. You said it yourself, like it's already been plug and play. Now you just repeat that process and kind of just scale it up from there. So with ads, the way our ads work, you know, you can scale it horizontally and vertically at the same time. So you just with the push of a button, you can increase ad spend to like 150 bucks a day or 200
exactly.
bucks a day. I mean, how much were you doing on ad spend per day? What was your budget?
Mine was 30. So
Yeah.
I would do, actually, it might have been a little more. I think it averaged out to like 33. I was doing 35, 40 some days. I wasn't doing a lot, just because I honestly don't know why I wasn't. I honestly just thought, I'm just going to keep it light, see what's working. But I have multiple creatives that I still need to launch that, like I think they're better than my first one, that I think I'll see more success, that I'll probably throw in, 50, 60, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But I would run story ads, I tested those out. Those actually were pretty great for the first, I think we ran them for like a week at first. Saw like with literally three creatives. I saw so much results within that to where it was like, putting out creatives, it was like inevitable that like, we weren't going to see double that,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's also a big thing is, people hear ads and they think, oh, okay, this guy's gonna make me put like 150 to 200 bucks a day on ads, or maybe like 70, 80 bucks a day. And that can be a lot for a lot of people, putting 80 bucks a day on ads when you're only making like 2, 3K a month. That's what you're making, So for you guys to do what you did with such a lean system, pretty high profit margins, as well as only doing 35, 40 bucks a day on ads is incredible. So, Zach, again, dude, I appreciate you for popping on here. I appreciate you for being very transparent. Drop your socials for these guys to find you. 50K this month and next month. They can follow you, keep you accountable, and check out where you're at there. So go ahead and drop your socials, brother.
Appreciate that. So on Instagram, ZAK, Zach, WIECZERZAK, Zach Weiser, Zach. Same on YouTube. I don't got Twitter, but whatever may be. I post content every day, value, lifestyle, everything like that. I'm traveling around the world if you guys do want to see that. And
Sick.
thank you, Noah, for having me, and thank you for everything that you've done for me.
For sure, bro. A lot more to do. So I'm pumped, but I appreciate you again for hopping on, Zach.
Got you.
Cheers,
Appreciate
man.
it.
Have a good one in
Take care.
Costa Rica. Cheers.
Later.